actually has several aspects to it. The first aspect, it's most dear to my heart, is introducing people to meditation, to self-inquiry, helping them discover and uncover, I would say, or recover this aspect about ourself that knows no sense of separation. Because when I see a person fall into this, it awakens great love and great kindness, great compassion. But more than that, it awakens them to their full humanness so that they're able to navigate their relationships, daily life, work, children, every moment of their life with an underlying sense of peace and joy. We talk about this peace that passeth all understanding. To me, the root of this work is to discover that peace that can't be broken, no matter our circumstance. So to really help people, to introduce them to that, to help them really awaken to it, not as an intellectual premise, not as a mental understanding, but as a full body experiencing. And then to help them weave it back into their life, into all of their relationships, so that we're on friendly terms with our emotions, our thoughts. We see them as actually aspects of who we really are, of consciousness. So there is this aspect of my work where I'm teaching retreats, holding workshops, trainings, both helping individuals come to this understanding, awaken if we want to use that word, but also then training teachers in how to bring this work back into the world for others. Another part of the work that I'm involved in is actually research. What is the effect of this in people's lives? So I've had the good fortune to be working in military settings with veterans, wounded warriors, the homeless, starting to work with women who've been rescued from sexual trafficking. We have a children's program for children as young as preschoolers, 3 years old through college. Both children and adults who we might say are fortunate in their lives, and then those who have suffered great misfortunes in their lives. So to look at the research to give the same thing that I teach in my classes, in my meditation retreats, to bring it to these populations, and then to study them and to see what is the impact, so that we come away seeing that actually it's changing people's lives. That as they come to understand themselves as awareness and feel their non-separation, they find a healing on several levels. One is they begin to feel more connected to themselves, and then they feel more connected to the world around them. For just the general person, this has great ramifications, but even more so for someone who's experienced trauma or great suffering, because trauma, suffering, disconnects us from ourselves and disconnects us from the world. So this work helps a person reconnect. One of the things I think is very important, and I've seen this especially with soldiers, they come back with a feeling from war that they're broken, disconnected from self, from family, from the culture around them, because they're now in a culture that hasn't been at war, doesn't understand their experience. And when they're at war, they're with a band of brothers or sisters that's very connected. Now they find themselves in daily life with people who don't understand them, and they can't understand the people they're around. this work that we do, that I do with teaching awareness and consciousness and non-separation, the first thing I want to do is introduce a person just to their basic beingness that we all share in common. I've never met a person, whether they're in a military setting, whether they're in a homeless shelter, or whether they're at a recreation center, who doesn't know what it's like just to be. But when I ask them to spend time, all of a sudden, and I ask them several questions, when you're just being, where do you feel being? And the question that comes back in many different formulations, but it's basically the same answer. I feel like I'm everywhere and nowhere specific. But I feel myself as an undeniable presence. And I ask them, and then take for example, I'm asking this of a veteran who's come back with post-traumatic stress. And I'm saying, when you're just being, and you're just being here, just being with yourself, what happens to your thinking mind? And they say, well, it starts to slow down. And I say, this feeling of being, is it familiar or unfamiliar? And they all say, no, it feels very familiar. They do say that they don't spend much time in being, but that it's familiar. And so I ask them, when you're just being, as being, do you feel any sense that something's wrong with you? Something's missing? And they all say, no, being feels complete and whole just as it is. And as we spend time with being, basically what I'm showing them is there's something here that's never been hurt, never been broken, never been harmed, has always been whole, has always been healthy. And to me, that's the starting point of healing. I've often been told when we go to a chemical dependency unit, or I go to a veterans and teach it at a class, a VA, that as they come into being, they say, I feel like I'm home. I feel like I just came home. And one fellow, I think so rightly said, and I've heard this in many different variations, as I come into my beingness, you're showing me what's right about me. Other programs are showing me what's wrong with me and what needs to be fixed and broken. You're showing me what's always been right about me that's not broken. And this fellow said, why would I want to visit my worst nightmare without knowing this? But now that I know this, I'm ready to visit my worst nightmare. So I think it's very important, both with people that are struggling and we're working to help them heal, but also with the general choir, I call them, who are interested in self-awareness, awareness, consciousness. That right from the start, we introduce them, we might say, to the final teaching. That being is the doorway to knowing oneself as not separate, as this consciousness that is everywhere, that breaks down the borders both to ourselves, so we begin to feel a deep connectedness to ourselves. But then when we look back out with those eyes, we see others as ourself. It breaks down the disconnection with the world around us and others, and leads to a tremendous healing that can be very quick. Then, to take that basic fundamental insight of our wholeness, our interconnectedness with all of life, back to those parts of us that may feel broken, that may feel need addressing. We come to them not in a manner so much as to fix them, as to welcome them into our wholeness. And in that welcoming, there's a spontaneous healing that arrives. So the emphasis shifts from something's wrong with me to what's right and has always been right about me, it's a game changer.